very much. My name is Peter Holmgren, Director General of CIFOR. My job for this session is really straightforward. I'm opening and handing over to the Honourable Minister Greg Hunt for introducing the rest of the session. Just wanted to say first that I had the pleasure of being in Sydney last year when the Rainforest Recovery Plan was born, and I've really appreciated the leadership of Australia on this matter, taking it to the region and possibly beyond. And we're now going to listen to the discussion and the plans for taking this forward. So by that, I hand over to the Honourable Minister to take us forward. Thank you.
Thanks very much to Peter and to everybody who's here. In a sense, this session follows almost perfectly from the previous launch of the Indonesian National Carbon Accounting Scheme, because this is about operationalising throughout the Asia-Pacific the flow of funds to provide those countries in rainforest zones with the ability to support their communities, to enhance biodiversity, and to reduce net carbon emissions. And I mentioned in the previous session that of the world's 50 billion tonnes of emissions, about 4 billion tonnes comes from deforestation. That's down from 8 billion tonnes over about a decade ago. So a profoundly important change. The potential exists when you look at the global carbon cycle, of course, to reduce what goes up, what is often referred to as the brown carbon, but in particular to enhance as well and to expedite the process of mitigation by bringing down the CO2 and storing it in our great savanna lands and forests, and in particular our rainforests. And the third part of that equation is through blue carbon, or oceanic mangrove, seagrass and saltbush, which, when you bring the three together, gives us a chance to enhance biodiversity, to support communities, and to reduce emissions at a global scale. In order to deal with the Asia-Pacific Rainforest Recovery Initiative, we've got a tremendous panel. Douglas Tumuriisa, the Minister for Forests from Papua New Guinea, and one of the most practical people in all of the Asia-Pacific in terms of keeping trees in the ground, of adding new trees to the ground, and of supporting populations, whilst recognising that countries have a right to evolve and to develop, and we can never forget that. He's supported here by, we're getting a message from Ali Apong, the Minister of Primary Resources and Tourism in Brunei, through a video, who apologises that he can't be here. We have Ada Greenbury, and Ada is the Managing Director, as you can see, of Sustainability and Stakeholder for Asia Pulp and Paper Group. But in Australia, I have, through the Bureau of Meteorology, responsibility for naming cyclones, natural phenomena of great force. And these are done on a rotational basis by alphabet. And Ada, when we get to the letter A, watch out for Cyclone Ada, in your honour, in the best possible way, because she is a true force of nature and will help change what happens on the ground in Indonesia through her work and efforts. And then the last person that I'm really honoured to have with us is Mark Turcek. Mark is the President and the CEO globally of the Nature Conservancy. So let me be very brief. What are we seeking to achieve through the Asia-Pacific Rainforest Recovery Initiative? The history, the what, and the how. So the history is that last year, in the lee of the World Parks Congress, we brought 300 people and 13 nations together to found an Asia-Pacific Rainforest Recovery Initiative. The goal was very simple: to end net deforestation within the region by 2030 and to halve it by 2020. They're ambitious objectives in line with the New York Declaration. The way in which we're doing that in terms of the WHO is we've brought together 13 countries. What we want to do far more significantly than that, though, is to bring together complementary international organisations and NGOs, which is why the Nature Conservancy is here. the Global Environment Facility met with us this week and pledged to back and support this initiative. We have the IUCN at the level of Inga Anderson, the Secretary General, who are engaged. The Green Climate Fund is very involved. And then I think in a way most significantly, corporates. And we're working with Australian firms such as Qantas, with Asia Pulp and Paper, and with many others that we want to bring on board. And you say, well, this brings me to the last thing. What is this about? How does it actually work? Because there are lots of global initiatives. Our goal is very clear, and that is to expedite the process of drawing funds from bilateral countries, from the international organisations and from corporates to invest in measurable, reportable and verifiable rainforest protection, avoided deforestation and restoration projects. And it's about direct identifiable projects and acting as a rapid clearinghouse. And so that's the idea. I know that the Png Minister, Douglas Tamuriisa, is very engaged in this. So just before I call him, I want to say that we are now going to take this forward with the next meeting that will be announced that I'll announce, given that the Bruneian Minister is not here, which will be held in Brunei from August 5, 6 and 7 next year. And what we want to do is make sure that the corporates and the NGOs and the international organisations are present. We want to extract a series of pledges, shamelessly, for specific projects. So between now and then, our goal is to identify projects, to make sure that ministers such as Douglas are able to leave with pledges of funds allied to particular projects in return for reportable and verifiable delivery. It doesn't rely or depend upon perhaps the slower systems such as REDD+, but to the extent it can be engaged, it will and it should. But what we really want to do is to deliver funds, to deliver projects which protect trees, which protect forests, and which enhance and restore forests where possible. And so it's a practical initiative. And then, of course, we want to roll this out in the other great rainforest basins of the world. And it looks as if tomorrow we might be in a position to announce a global rainforest recovery initiative with many of the world's leading partners. So with that, I'd be delighted to call upon the PNG Minister for Forests, the extraordinary and energetic Douglas Tamuriisa.
Hello, everyone. Minister Gregan, thank you for inviting us to be part of this panel this afternoon. And Aida and Mark as co-panels on this chair this afternoon. It is actually a great honor to be here, seated with Minister Gregan and his team of experts on the Asia-Pacific Rainforest Recovery Plans. We are honored to be invited a couple of times to sit with Minister Greg Hunt and indulge in some of the bigger plans he has for Australia and the Asia-Pacific. First of all, I'd like to do a bit of introduction of Papua New Guinea. Some of you may be wondering where Papua New Guinea is. And so Papua New Guinea is to the east of Indonesia. We share one of the islands of Indonesia, and we are to the north of Australia. Papua New Guinea, with the island of Papua New Guinea, we have the third largest forest cover in the world, and about 8 to 10% of the biodiversity of the world is somewhere hidden in the jungles of Papua New Guinea. And yeah, the flora and fauna as well. 85% of our people live off the land, and they are rural-based. And so for Papua New Guinea, forest is of great essence. Forest is the supermarket of our people. Forest is the hospital of our people. Forest is where our people live. They've been living there for the last hundreds of years, and they feel comfortable to be there. When you move them out and bring them out to the urban areas, they're very, very uneasy. And so for us in Papua New Guinea, forest is the way to go. And the conservation of our forest, the RED programs that we talk about today, our people have been practicing this for hundreds and hundreds of years. And that's why it is very important for people like me, as the Minister for Forest, to make certain that we keep the forest intact. Because if we do not keep the forest intact for the next generation, it will cause a lot of disaster for our people. It will cause a lot of people who would like to move into urban areas, and it will bring a lot of pressure on infrastructure in the urban areas. And for now, Papua New Guinea is beginning to see that, and the government is stepping up to make certain that they get infrastructure development in the urban areas ready for such. But however, we have good news. We have good news, and that's why I'm here to announce some of those good news to such forum, so that the international community will begin to understand some of the things that we are doing in Papua New Guinea, Minister Greg Hunt. And for too long, Papua New Guinea, the name Papua New Guinea itself and its forest resources have been on a negative note. People have said a lot of bad things about Papua New Guinea in terms of forest. But we've changed that. We've changed that, and we want people to know that we are serious in terms of conservation. And so let me just go through my notes and see what I have here. Every country has a different set of circumstances that need to be considered, and to achieve a global goal, we all need establish our own plans and work hard to achieve them. And true, we have our own specifics. Papua New Guinea has its own specifics, and you cannot compare Papua New Guinea with any other small nations. Our Papua New Guinea goals and aspirations for forest management and so cannot be the same as Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and the smaller nations. And so we come here as our Prime Minister is the chairman of the PIF, Pacific Islands Forum, and we'd like to announce to the gathering here and to the COP some of the things that we are doing. Papua New Guinea has developed the STARS program, and this has been developed through the National Planning Department as a central agency that provides a policy framework to integrate principles of responsible, sustainable development in our country's future. I am pleased to announce today that Papua New Guinea Forest Authority is further integrating these principles in our operational framework. And in doing so, we are looking at protecting a lot of our pit soils. And Papua New Guinea, like Indonesia, has got very vast areas of pit soils. In fact, it starts from the borders, from border to border. From one side of the border where Australia is, and it comes around to where Indonesia is. And our pit soils need to be protected. We are serious of protecting these areas because agriculture is coming in a very aggressive manner. And as you know, oil palm comes and they want to plant oil palms in all these areas. And we are looking at legislating to make certain that we contain these areas for purposes of carbon. Firstly, Papua New Guinea is committed to preserving our rainforest and is looking to create 2 million hectares of red reserves in Papua New Guinea. 2 million hectares. This is a commitment the government has made, and we have legislated this. We have made it a serious note. When I first got into the Ministry of Forest, I was appointed about 18 months ago. And I said, what sort of legacy I would like to leave for my grandchildren in the future. And I said that I think it would be better that when my grandchildren come up one day, they'll say, it was our grandfather. And they say boo-boo in Papua New Guinea, we say boo-boo to our grannies. One day, I would like to see my boo-boo say, you've done this. And that is a legacy that each one of us sitting here should seriously look at conserving forest, making certain that we cannot continue to have logging companies come and do whatever they want. Of the 15 million hectares of loggable forest we have 4 million hectares left. Thank God that Papua New Guinea's forest recovers very, very quickly. And because we have a 35-year cycle, when you log an area, you have to leave it for 35 years before you get back and relog that area. And a lot of our areas in Papua New Guinea have recovered. And because of the tropical climate that we have, Minister Greg Hunt. Of the 15 million hectares that I've spoken about, this is only loggable areas. There are certain areas where the terrain is rough, where you cannot get up there and log. It is even more than 15 million hectares. However, we have to begin to protect those areas also. Because I come to other countries, and I see that technology can take us to those areas and we can log them. And it is important that we conserve those areas, we protect those areas as well. So whilst we're talking about loggable areas to preserve those areas for RED plus programs, we must also look at those areas where we can, that are not loggable, but in the near future, because of technology, we can get in there and log those areas. Secondly, we are committed, these are globally significant contribution to mitigate climate change and provide a clear message of Papua New Guinea's intent. And again, we are very serious on conservation. We are committed to reforestation of 15,000 hectares by 2020 and moving to 800,000 hectares by 2050. And thirdly, we are committed to having all harvested timber in Papua New Guinea processed in Papua New Guinea. We will have no more round log exports by 2020. The moratorium was set by previous government for round log exports to cease by 2030. But with this government and with the initiatives that we have reduced that moratorium from 2030 down to 2020. Because we realized that if we allow it to be 2030, you might as well kiss goodbye to all the forest in Papua New Guinea. To assist these commitments, we are seeking to establish a Center for RED focused on research, technology, and integrating our other important core benefits such as community and biodiversity elements in our products. As our Minister for National Planning would say, this is a paradigm shift. We need to get to work. And to get to work, as President Obama said in his opening address here at the COP21. Climate change is a global problem, and we must have a global solution. And we believe that in Papua New Guinea, through the RED Plus program, we're hoping that we can be recognized. And I take this opportunity to thank Minister Greg Hunt in that he's seen that Papua New Guinea has got a potential to save the lands of the world through our forest. And we've worked very closely with Minister Greg Hunt, and I commend him for the initiatives he's taken. And I hope that in the next few days when the announcements that he make, it will benefit our country. And I hope that the global community would look at the commitments that we've made with 2 million hectares being set aside, even more than that, and other commitments that we have made in this presentation. Countries must work together, and we must also call on the private sector to engage and assist these efforts. I think this call cannot go any louder more. I think it is very, very clear. In the next few days, I intend Minister Greg Hunt to leave here tomorrow, because the climate change effect has actually hit my people, the electorate, the people that I represent, the 76,000 people on 2 islands. It's actually hit my people very, very hard, to the point where I need to deliver rice to the people. It's been 9 months without rain, and the water holes have gone dry. I hear today when the doctor rang me up, he said there's a dysentery outbreak on the island, and water has become very scarce on the island. I think people like Steve Hooper, the gentleman seated out there, who supported us, and he's got through Australia some water filters that I will be taking down. The water filters have already been transported through TNT to Papua New Guinea. And as I get there, hopefully I get to Papua New Guinea by Tuesday, and we'll get the water filters to the islands. And the message is very, very clear. On my island, we don't have trees, big trees. So I cannot talk red on the island. But the island of Papua New Guinea, we can talk red. And I thank you that such panels like this, we can raise issues of truths, issues that are affecting us every day. And Minister Greg Anta, I'd like to thank you once again, and I thank you for to the panel and the audience for listening to me. Thank you.
Many thanks to Douglas and Ada Greenbury from Asia Pulp and Paper.
Thank you, Minister Hunt, for the extraordinary introduction about myself. COP21 is fundamentally about bringing people together and bringing nations together to find pragmatic, workable, and sustainable solutions to the world's environmental challenges. The very philosophy behind such a gathering is that different and indeed differing perspectives are vital if the best outcomes are to be found and then achieved. That's why I'm delighted to stand here at the launch of Asia-Pacific Rainforest Recovery Plan. And this Rainforest Recovery Plan is basically hopefully will provide policymakers with crucial private sector perspective. I believe that the stated key goals of the Rainforest Recovery Plan to end natural rainforest loss in the region by 2030, hopefully much sooner than that, and restore large tracts of degraded rainforests by that date, to support, to synergize with and to build alliance with the actors beyond the other initiatives, such as the New York Declaration on Forests and also One Challenge. But it will provide more than a private sector perspective that I represent. It is a sign that I hope of things to come. The Rainforest Recovery Plan is unique. It is unique in that it has been designed by Asia-Pacific, by the region, for the region, and with experience and funding from the region. As the Global South takes more leadership in sustainability and conservation, this program is one which I hope we can all be proud of. And as we start to take position of leadership, we should be ensuring that the schemes we design are as simple and as practical as possible. This initiative should be judged not on the size of the bureaucracy that it creates, but on the impact on the ground. In some circles, leadership by commercial entities in this area has been dismissed because the commercial entities are the cause of deforestation, that private sectors are the enemy. I say that commercial activities can exist in harmony with efforts to protect and restore rainforests within Asia-Pacific region. Indeed, it's a must. This confidence comes from my own experience and the journey taken by my company, Asia Pulp and Paper Group, one of the world's largest pulp and paper producers. Almost 3 years ago, we launched our forest conservation policy, an unprecedented initiative to eliminate deforestation across our supply chain. At a basic level, this has meant transforming our business model from a previous reliance on natural forest to sourcing 100% of our power from renewable plantation wood. On top of this, we have to look more broadly at how Asia Pulp and Paper Group can help prevent deforestation across Indonesia, beyond just our own supply chain or concessions, using what we call a landscape approach, including initiatives aimed at protecting and restoring degraded and deforested land and also peat landscape. In March, for example, we were the only private sector company to participate in Bond Challenge, and which aims to restore 150 million hectares of degraded and deforested land globally together with other stakeholders. And just in August this year, we made an announcement on our new peatland protection strategy, as part of which we plan to retire 7,000 hectares of commercial plantation areas to protect threatened carbon-rich peatlands. The first time that plantation on tropical peatland have been retired for conservation purposes worldwide. If my company can do that, if one company can do this, what can 10 or 100 or 1,000 companies achieve? This Rainforest Recovery Plan and program will also comprise of senior representatives from industries as diverse as mining, banking, agribusiness and forestry, manufacturing and the legal profession. Importantly, our members will also be drawn from nations throughout the region. The purpose will be to explore public sector policy relating to deforestation from a private sector perspective and formally present our deliberation at the next Asia-Pacific Rainforest Summit in Brunei next year, right? So we will be holding our inaugural meeting early next year and hoping to develop an agenda around a small set of working groups. That could be, first, that we want to examine the drivers of deforestation in our region from private sector perspective and promote closer regional coordination with a clear understanding of which landscapes and in which region we need to focus on. Then we do need to clearly identify the stakeholders in each landscape and link it to the supply chains of all downstream partners. We want to leverage the expertise and commercial acumen available to us, addressing reasons for the blockage of financial flows from the large multilateral donor funds to rainforest conservation activities, to create a closer relationship between funding and the real change and activity on the ground. We think we can add value by examining ways to strengthen the private sector's agroforestry collaboration with community. Collaboration with the community is key to promote sustainable forestry practices among medium and small holders. Communities have to own this work, with us bringing them on board. We will consider how to best improve our cooperation between the private sector and NGOs and donors in the forest conservation sector. And finally, promote best practice private sector behaviors in relation to sustainable forest management and regreening the industry. So I'm very excited today, as this is an opportunity to both contribute to multinational policy development and generally act as a rallying point for private sector companies throughout the region who want to make themselves sustainable for the long term. This Asia-Pacific Rainforest Recovery Program is a chance to contribute to process that can positively impact the lives of hundreds of millions of people, restore the health and well-being of the entire ecosystem in the region, and bring numerous species back from the brink of extinction. I would like to thank Minister Hunt and his colleagues for the trust that has been placed in us, private sectors, and I will look forward to see you again in the next summit. Thank you.
Thanks very much to Ada and the President and CEO of the Nature Conservancy Worldwide, Mark Turchek.
Thank you, Minister Hunt. Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity to say a few words. It's an honor for me to be here with Greg from Australia, Douglas from Papua New Guinea, and Ada from the private sector APP. I think that lineup underscores an important part of our going forward plans. That is collaboration between governments, wisely designed government programs, multilateral programs, in combination with host governments, in combination with the private sector and civil society. I'll note there's two other groups I think could be on the panel if we had more time. Communities. Ada mentioned how important community support will be. We know at the Nature Conservancy our projects only work if the local community is behind them and benefiting from them. And then the financial community is not here. But I worked at Goldman Sachs for 25 years before I joined the Nature Conservancy, so I can speak a little bit for the finance community too. First, a little bit of commentary on Australia's leadership here. I want to compliment Australia. It's been a generous funder for regional rainforest protection efforts, but it's been mindful of the need for economic progress as well. And I think that's really smart because I think that's the best way to go forward. To the extent protecting the rainforest can make economic sense for local communities and countries, I think that's a better way to accelerate progress. And I think it can also unlock more funding as we look forward. We can be proud of the work that's been accomplished to date. The Nature Conservancy has been proud to be the lead NGO on the RAFT program, but there are many great NGOs working with us, working in countries like PNG, Indonesia, Malaysia, across Asia. There's no question, with a variety of companies in the private sector, there's no question we can put together successful projects that save rainforests at the project level in a way that makes economic sense. So our challenge now as we look forward is how do we accelerate and scale these efforts up? That's the challenge going forward. I think there's room for optimism, but we're going to have to be smart. So when we think about the multilateral funding or funding from the Australian government or donor funding, we'll want to be smart about how to use that in the best way so that it can then unlock private sector funding. And people at this summit, we talk about climate finance in so many ways. It's somewhat misleading sometimes. There's different kinds of climate finance. They're all important. Some are grants. Some is concessionary. Some is from donations. But ultimately, we want that old-fashioned finance that is profit-seeking, return maximizing. Because if we can figure out how to harness that, that could be a way to accelerate and really harness progress. You know, there was so much excitement about Bill Gates' initiative toward renewable energy and the R&D associated with that. And that's wonderful. We're for that. But I actually think if you step back, what lies ahead in protecting rainforests is easier. It's less risk. We can do this. Again, if governments, NGOs, the private sector like APP, communities, the finance community come together and really think hard about what are those programs that will make the most environmental sense, community sense, business sense, and provide financial returns, that's a way forward. I'm excited about all the activity that's happening here at the Global Landscape Forum, and the Nature Conservancy is optimistic. Again, we're not the only NGO in this space. We have a high regard for our peers, but speaking for them, if I might, I think you can count on the NGO sector to step forward too, but these are exciting times. There's reason to be optimism, but there's also a reason to really feel like we better get moving because time's not on our side. So it's time to move. When we leave this conference, we got to get into action mode. And I thank my fellow panelists and especially Australia for their leadership here. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Mark. I think there's probably an appetite for questions. We're happy to take 3 quick questions. If you're quick, we'll be quick. We'll open the floor to any questions. I will note, Mark, that the finance sector is here. I see Mark Burrows, one of the sort of famous figures in the green financing sector. Hard as nails, Credit Suisse, soft heart though, and global vice president. So there are some really high-powered people here. Any questions? Or not? Yes, sir. If you could just identify yourself and pose your question.
Thank you. My name is Fitrian Aldiansyah. I'm the country director of IDH, Sustainable Trade Initiative in Indonesia. Whoever that can answer or respond to my questions. The cost for restorations is enormous, especially in countries like Indonesia. Even if you take into account legal costs, to get license fee, annual taxes, and so forth, is enormous. I've calculated myself it's around $6 million upfront that you have to pay for 60 years. So I'm just wondering whether this global forest recovery actions or initiative would also, create some sort of support so private sector can see that this is part of incentives that can be used to, to take into account or to get involved in this restoration. Thank you.
Sure, look, I think that's very important. There are really two parts to the projects we're looking at. Systems, such as the Indonesian National Carbon Accounting Scheme, in a sense that without that you can't monitor, report or verify, and so that's where international assistance came in, Indonesian work, perhaps international support and finance. Similarly, this is where the Global Environment Facility and the Green Climate Fund are extremely interested, as well as bilateral donors. I imagine corporates, to the extent that they're involved, will naturally want to be engaged in direct projects. They've got to be able to show something very tangible to their shareholders. They are natural managers of coups and projects and areas, and this is what Ada was talking about. So the way we conceive of it is some structural support in relation to legal systems or monitoring, and then some direct support for particular projects based on rapid delivery. And of course the ultimate system will be where we can apply RED+, but in the meantime we want to make sure that we can get these projects done over the course of the next 3 and 5 years. Up the back, and then number 3 and 4, and then in the interests of good governance we'll have to call it time.
Hi, my name's Jessie. I'm from The Body Shop. I have 2 questions. The first one is the Australian government taking such an invested interest because you feel your voters want you to? And 2, and it's not a criticism, volatile governments, especially in Southeast Asia and Australia with leadership, how do you protect the longevity of these projects?
Look, you're right, Australia has had more prime ministerial changes than most other countries, so we accept that. Look, one of the things that you do is you strike long-term agreements and contracts, and in the same way that domestically, the key to our emissions reduction fund has been doing 10-year contracts. Internationally, striking agreements and contracts will almost always last the test of time. None of us can guarantee the governance arrangements, but those contracts really help. Why have we been involved? I think the answer is the public wants it, but also as a decision maker, I've got to say it's a deep personal passion. Douglas expressed it magnificently about his relationship with his grandchildren, and you know, that is the same deep motive. That it may surprise you, but politicians are people too, and in the end, people from all around. Why do you do your work with The Body Shop?